folks, it's Rob Appell from Stitchin Heaven over on YouTube, and you can see we are inside of the sewing sequoia. Should we actually call good old Sanford that? And I just backed into one of my favorite spots to hang out, surf, fish, and possibly sew. I'm hoping the wind isn't too tough, and we're going to start what is sewing adventure number one. I grabbed a grab and go kit. I've got a great, simple, easy project, a table runner. Let's see if we can make this happen here. All right. One of the things I got super excited about was sewing outside, forgetting that half of what you love about what I do is the cinematography. So I'm at a wonderful spot, but it's gonna be tough to film it and get the lighting and everything right. So we're gonna have a great experiment today. We're gonna see how this goes. Awesome. That's right, folks. It is a beautiful day out. I'm just a few miles north of Cayucas. I think I've got this microphone situation figured out. I do want to do a little bit of test sewing, and I've already realized I've forgotten a few key elements for Adventure 1. And one of those was my little extra sewing table that goes off my 1941 Singer sewing machine. And I can sew without the extension table, no problem. But the second is the actual solar panel. So we're starting at 91% battery today. We'll just see how this goes. I'm getting my machine all threaded up. I've got my 1/4 inch set, and I'm going to dive into one of these grab and go kits from Stitchin Heaven. It says that everything is included. It's pre-cut patchwork pieces, borders, binding, backing for a table runner. It's going to be a 4-patch star table runner. So I did bring a rotary cutter with me. I've got my mini iron. I've got a little cutting ruler there, but it says everything's included. I haven't even cut the package open yet, so hopefully we'll be able to do this. It's also just after last coffee time in the afternoon. You can see the sun is already out here on the horizon, so it's about 3 in the afternoon, and I'm not sure how much time we'll actually have to get all of this done with all of the monkeying around I'm actually doing, getting set up here. But anyways, I just thought this would be fun to have you along for a little sewing today. So sewing in the sequoia by the sea. Okay, so some great fabric choices here. Those squares we're going to sort into the 2 different sizes. It says there's some bigger squares and some medium squares. So we're going to get those broken down, and then those fabrics there are going to be set aside as backing and border and binding as we get going here. Okay, so our first step is going to be building the 4 patches with the smaller squares. So for this section, I'm just actually going to set these fabrics aside, and a 4 patch is just like a miniature checkerboard. So basically, I'm going to take, and we're going to need 4 of these. So you're just going to go ahead and do, like I said, like a little checkerboard here for yourselves. And it's really almost easiest if you just sew them all the same together at first. So let's just put our light fabrics on top of our dark fabrics, and then put your rotary cut them on top of them so the wind doesn't blow them away. And then we're going to get these all prepped out and running through the sewing machine here. Sewing a 1/4 inch seam allowance just on one side. 4 by 4 would be 16. So that's 2, 4. So it's going to use up all of these fabrics. Let's get over to the sewing machine. Okay, just a nice easy 1/4 inch seam allowance here. And because of the wind, I'm going to chain pieces, meaning sewing them all together, and then I'll cut them apart, keeping them a little more secure. Just keep my fabrics right sides together, keeping them all the same. Okay, folks, now, like I said, and I think I might have over-calculated, we need 8 of these little combinations of our A and C fabrics for our 4 patches we're going to make. So 8 of these units, all chain pieced together. Now I can go ahead and cut them apart, bringing them out of the machine here, making them subject to the wind. And now I'm really excited to see how my little Clover mini iron is going to do the trick as an actual quilting iron goes here. I've had it for years for applique, and it's the only iron right now that I have that's working in the car system. So this is going to be really exciting here. Let's see how this works. And if this is your first time to see one of my solar sewing setup videos, I'm sewing out of the back of a Sequoia, 2002 Sequoia Toyota that I love, and I'm running off of a Jackery battery system. Oh yeah, that's going to press the seam real nice, isn't it? Perfect. Now that we paired up those fabrics in the first step, all we're going to do now is take sets of 2 and just rotate them. So that's why when you press all your fabrics to one side, it makes these really cool little nestled seams. So they're going to be opposites of each other like this. So again, just make sure your fabrics are on opposite sides and match up that center seam and another 1/4 inch seam allowance along this edge here. I'm going to just chain piece this section. So fortunately, the wind's not too bad at the moment. Sewing along the beach can be a little tricky that way. Beautiful February day here, north of Morro Bay, north of the little town of Cayucas. Chain piecing through. Okay. Now I'm just going to personally leave all of those connected for a few minutes so they don't blow away. And let's see what our next step is here. Okay, next step is going to be grabbing those other size squares, the larger squares, and on the light fabrics on the back side, we're going to draw a diagonal line. So I am now confirming you're going to need a pencil and a ruler that's at least, let's say, 7 or 8 inches long. And we're going to now draw a diagonal line corner to corner on the back side of all of those larger fabric A squares. So in my kit, A is the lightest, B was my blue, and C is my crimson, or my red. Okay, so I'm just going to take a minute and do this. And here's another fun trick, folks, is if you didn't have a pencil, you could just press this fabric in half and make a line, but I find this is going to be more accurate. We're going to use this line here in a second to sew some half square triangles. We're going to get 2 from each section today. With the diagonal lines drawn on the back of your fabric A, you're now going to go ahead and put them right sides together on those fabric C squares, right? So just going to lay them all up like this, and then we're going to go on over to the sewing machine, and I'm using an edge guide, so I got to move that out of the way right now. And now I'm just going to use my eye for that 1/4 inch. And so it's a 1/4 inch from either side of the drawn line. And for chain piecing, it's going to be easier if I do all one side and then I cut them apart and I do the other side. So I'm just going to go ahead here, and hopefully these don't blow away, and match them up right sides together, and then just go ahead and keep on with my 1/4 inch seam allowance, 1/4 inch from that drawn line. And now just cutting apart these pieces, and I'm going to keep them all stacked in order, making it easier and easier to run them through the machine for the second pass. This sewing machine does not feature the modern benefits of a fast motor or a thread cutter or a knee lift system or any of those things, so it's kind of fun. It's really slowing me down. I am thoroughly enjoying sewing outside. I probably should have put on more sunscreen. I can feel it starting to cook me a little bit, so we may have to wrap this up before I finish, just for health reasons. But anyways, we are having a lot of fun. Not sure if I told you, we do need 16 of these little wonderful half square triangle to B units. And I'm going to finish making these out. And then there were those other 4 patches. And now we're just going to go ahead and run 1/4 inch on the other side, so that that little drawn line we did now has 1/4 inch seam allowances on both sides, which will yield 2 half square triangles from both of these squares. Okay, so we've got all of the sewing done for the half square triangles, and we're going to cut these apart in a second. And then I like to trim them down for accuracy, but the pattern itself doesn't tell us what size. But here's a great trick. This square right here has to be the same size square as a half square triangle. So you basically just take one of the leftover squares from your kit, and then you can go ahead and measure it, okay, and it looking like a 3-inch square to me. So now we'll just make all of those half square triangles once they're cut and pressed into 3-inch squares. So let me show you how to trim those here in just a second, so that you've got a really nice, accurate half square triangle. Part of the fun was grabbing the kit and running out the door. Right now, I really wish I had my Clearly Perfect slotted trimmer with me. You know, I just love that tool, and it makes these half square triangles awesome. And you actually trim them before you iron. And right now, because I'm kind of on a limited ironing setting, and I found I've already done a couple tests. These are pretty dang accurate, but I still want to go ahead and cut them in half like that, cutting right along that drawn line. Using my little iron here, I'm pressing into the dark fabric finger pressing may be just as accurate right now for me because I don't have a full-size iron out here. And then what I'm going to do really, folks, here is I'm just going to check. We're looking for a 3-inch. So by using the diagonal on my ruler, I'm going to square up this first line because it's a little bit bigger on all 4 sides. And I'm just trimming and shaving, and then I love, whoa, rotate that mat. Stop, hold still. Or just rotate your fabric if you're in a windy, beautiful beach cove here. And then again, just trimming that last. The first ones I did, I just had to basically take the dog ear off one side and then a light shave on the other. Like I said, they're pretty dang accurate, folks. If you wanted to just kind of come in and like dog ear by doing a little 45 style cut right there and then press, you might find that that's just as accurate for you. I like having the dog ears out of the way. It really does help with the bulk as we're building these bad boys out. Boy, that's pretty close, but I could also still trim it. I'm trying not to litter out here with my little scraps, but I do believe the birds are going to love me, and we're going to have some of the most beautiful nests this side of Morro Rock for sure. Okay, folks, let's get to this block because the wind is starting to kick up a little bit. So we've got our 4 patch. I'm not sure if you can see that or not. That's going to go in the center. And then what we're going to need is we're going to need 8 of our half square triangles, and we're going to join them so that our light fabrics or our A fabrics form an arrowhead or a point or a tent like this. And so what we're going to go ahead and do now is we're going to sew 4 of those groups together so that we have our majority of our sections of our block made. And again, we can chain piece these, just making sure that you're paying attention that the white or your light fabric A tips are matching up there. Okay, so I'm just going to take a moment and press these, but they're just going to go to one side. They're both the same colored fabrics touching. And then these white tips, again, they're going to point into our 4 patch. So as I'm actually pressing those now, I'm just going to grab one and I'm going to fold it over and I'm going to do it to this side and then the opposite side. And then we will need to go ahead and get our cornerstones on before we go any further on those last rows. So everything's just a 1/4 inch seam allowance, nice and easy now. Okay, so this is going to look like this. Getting that opposite side on now. Okay, and now that we have these units built like this, I'm going to go ahead and set this aside for a second. And then those squares we had earlier that were our smaller squares with our A fabric, you're going to need 2 of those to match up to your units that are basically what we would technically call this a flying geese. And this could have been made a couple of different ways, but with everything pre-cut in the kit, this is the really wonderful, easy way. So I'm just going to go ahead and join one of these squares here on that side. And remember, that's how we were able to figure out what size to trim our half squares triangles to. I'm just going to sew one of these on both sides now. Then I'm going to press into the solid fabrics away from the patchwork, those half square triangles, because that just makes it easier on the seam. Okay, and now we can take this, just double check your orientation, making sure that your C fabrics are pointing out like they were on the other side. And then I'm just going to stitch along this with a 1/4 inch, making sure that each of those little seam allowances match as I go. So this is going to look like this here now. And we're just going to build that last side. So now that I'm confident because I've made the first block. Oh, let me show you. It turned out great, by the way. Look at that. Isn't that cool? So I'm going to go ahead and start just mass producing these now. Going back to the little half square triangle units, and I'm going to just match up, like I said, the points on those light fabrics and start chain piecing them through the machine. And again, on these little squares, there's really no wrong way to do it usually. So just make sure you're using light fabrics. You've got your right sides together. Chain piece these together now too. Oh, this couldn't be going better. I've got all 4 blocks made. I've been enjoying the heck out of myself for the last couple of hours. And it always takes longer when you're filming yourself doing this kind of stuff. But yeah, I'm just going to check my blocks real quick. As like I said, they're all done. And now we're just going to join our blocks at the star points. Basically real easy here. So again, just lining up the seam allowances for each of where the squares came together. Go ahead and run that through the machine. Now, the cool thing about this grab and go kit, this was a table runner, which was good for 4 blocks. So I'm going to make a long skinny project, but technically, if I wasn't counting on the borders and the backing and everything, I really could do a 2x2, making 4 of these into a row, or of course I could make other squares that match up. So this is really fun to be working with this. It's been a bit, it was a little challenging in the wind, but it was also wonderful to be out here kind of in nature and having a little bit less technology with me as far as the machine goes. It kind of slowed me down, and I really enjoyed myself here. Okay, so now that's 2 of them stitched together. Like I was saying, I could do 2 more and make a square, but I'm going to go long and skinny like the instructions called for. Okay, let me just point out here as we're assembling the blocks, you want to make sure you keep each block in the same orientation because of that 4-patch center. So as I have those 2 together with that darker square up there, then as I bring in the next block, I just want to make sure, right, that that square is also in the same orientation. Very easy. Okay, now that we have all 4 of the blocks sewn in a row in the appropriate direction, now the really cool thing about the grab and go kits is even the border fabrics were pre-cut for me here. So I'm going to go ahead and just see. It looks like, oh yeah, perfect. We're going to put on the long sides first, right sides together, and then the short sides will fit right in there. So just go ahead and match up one of those top edges and bring it on over to the sewing machine, and just with a nice easy 1/4 inch, we're all but done here, folks. It's just one border on this project. The other fabrics included in the kit are for the backing and for the binding. So once we get these borders on, I think we can go fishing. Okay, that long border fit perfect. Let's go ahead and put the other side on now. Again, just using the edges of the fabrics to line everything up. Nice 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now this border will be too long for me to be effective with my little mini iron out here. So really, I want to do a nice good ironing before I get this ready for the quilting process. So I'm just going to kind of press up in the corners, the 3 or 4 inches worth on each side, so that at least that seam's kind of set before I try to put in the short borders, top and bottom. Sewing on that last short border now, and my goodness, this has been a super fun project, folks. I hope you've enjoyed the video today. Hope you were able to learn all of the steps, even though it was a little unconventional, but we're going to do a bunch of these. This was the test, so definitely a successful adventure 1. All right, and here we go for the big reveal. There's your kit, there's your table runner, done in style. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end of the video. It really helps support our channel. If you haven't subscribed, do so now. Hit the little button to be notified every time we go live or do a new video for all of you. And here's one from the past I think you'll really enjoy.